Hello, friends, and welcome to another all new Snap Judgments. On this, the seventh episode, since we became the official podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone, I'm Roy Rogers, and joining me, as always, is my friend and yours, Aaron Glazer. Glazer, my friend, please tell our loyal listeners and viewers, how are you doing? How have things been with you?
Things are great. It's summer. I'm going on vacation next week, but the content will not notice. There will still be everything that would be if I were in town. So be ready for me in Mexico drinking on a beach while random videos and podcasts go up.
Sounds like fun. My wife and I just got back from Philadelphia, which is where we recorded the last episode. I was on hotel internet. It was quite the experience, having not done a podcast on hotel internet before. Actually, that's not true. Maybe I did one of our older podcasts on hotel internet at some point, but I hadn't done this show on that. But we are in a fresh week. New friends are joining us. Aaron, who are our loyal listeners and loyal viewers going to have the pleasure of being introduced to now?
We've got W because that's all he gets. Welcome to the cast, W. Formerly, I'm just going to do the formerly. I'm so sorry. Because otherwise, someone's going to be like, why do I know that name? What's that name from? This is the former WWLOS. He's awesome. How you doing, and how can our listeners find you?
I'm doing great. W, artist formerly known as WWLOS, WWLOS, WWLOS. On Twitter, I am now W_Marvel Snap. I almost have to double check myself on those things because it's been changing. I want it more consistent. WWLOS was hard for a lot of people. So now we're just W. But yeah, it's W_Marvel Snap, and on Twitch, W Streaming.
We've also got the only man who can make Kosie's editing look bad. How you doing, WolverThor? Where can people find you?
I'm good, and that is way too high of a compliment, but thank you. But you can find me generally by searching WolverThor. My YouTube channel is WolverSnap. On Twitter, I am just WolverThor. And when I do stream, which hasn't been for a while, but I'm hoping to get back to it at some point, it's WolverThor Official on Twitch.
Awesome. So make sure, loyal listeners, that you go out there and check them out on social media, their streams, their YouTube channels. But if you're looking to engage with us on social media, there are a multitude of places. Second most important is our Twitter, which is at SnapJudgeCast, where you can find Aaron Glazer being every Marvel Snap
Loves
creator's
my
favorite
first name
reply
today.
guy. Yes, I do. I've been talking to human beings a lot recently, so I'm used to using full names. All right. That awkward transition. You can also find, you can also find right now on our Twitter the retweet that we were nominated for Best Podcast. All right. So you should definitely go check that out, see how awesome we are. But also, and more importantly, you should go and join the Marvel Snap Zone Discord, where you can find us, particularly Glazer, engaging with our loyal listeners and viewers and the rest of the Marvel Snap Zone community, because we are the official Marvel podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone. It is so awesome to be part of their community. Glazer's making awesome content for them, and they are the best large community Discord out there. You can also reach us on email, somewhere between the kick spam that we get thanks to Glazer, which is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Mastodon at snapjudgments with an E at Tabletop VIP. But most importantly, of all of our social medias, if there's one you go to after listening to this episode on RES feed or watching it on the Marvel Snap Zone YouTube, is to go to our personal YouTube, which is at Snap Judgments Pod, where every weekday and many weekend days you can find Glazer's Snap Takes, which even when he's on vacation will be coming to you daily on YouTube. Glazer, if our loyal listeners became loyal viewers of our YouTube channel, what would they find on the YouTube right now?
So I think right now I have, thankfully, the clearest explanation on how to use the new system of Spotlight caches to get every card. it's not easy and requires some doing, and the system might not be all positive. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. But regardless, you can game the system to try and have basically every card in the game within a semi-reasonable time frame, and it's worth knowing how to do that. In addition, we just do 2 decks every weekday to try and help you stay ahead of the meta and get to infinite.
Awesome. So make sure you follow us on YouTube and follow our wonderful guests, WolverThor and W, on their social media. Now, with all of that wonderful stuff out of the way, we can jump right in to sort of our 2 topics today. We have sort of some news of the new card. Maybe we'll talk also a little bit about Jean Grey and sort of the new Spotlight caches. And then we'll jump into our big topic, which is the top 10 overlooked decks right now in the meta. But before we can get to that big topic, let's talk real quick about Echo herself. So for those of you who are loyal listeners and not the loyal viewers of the show, Echo is a 1-for-2 and has the ability, after your opponent plays an ongoing card here, remove its abilities. WolverThor, Echo is not a supporting character of either Wolverine or Thor, but do you have any thoughts on this card?
I do. I originally liked it quite a bit. I think I was just having dreams of actually being able to pull off some MODOK Hela plays without being Cosmo'd. And I just was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be great. And then, I don't know, the more I sort of started thinking about it, I'm like, this seems a little niche. And if you don't get the draws right, it's going to feel real, real bad. So I know we're going to talk spotlights a little bit, but, I'm still going to open for her, but it's mainly because there's another card I need in there. I think it's going to be annoying, but people can still play their ongoing cards somewhere else if they really need to. So to me, I'm staring at a lot of Cosmo protection.
W?
Yeah, it is niche. The 1-drop spot in general for tech has historically been weird. Like, I pulled up all the cards in the 1-drop spot I consider tech, and the really solid ones are ones that like are proactive and you know what you're getting each game out of them. It's like Spider-Ham, Iceman, Korg, if you want to call 0-1, like, you know what you're getting out of these cards each and every game. Echo's a card that is niche, and it's hard to afford it. It's a luxury in some decks, so it can serve a great purpose as Cosmo protection. I think it enables, the Hela stuff. It can protect your, on reveal, like, hard, like if you really just want to play those decks. But it's niche. I think it can find a place, but it just doesn't do enough at a 1-drop of Killmonger. How it is, it's hard.
So I think it's cool with Valkyrie, and I love Valkyrie, so that's a thing. But, like, we don't have sideboards, and this is, like, if we were rating Magic cards, this would get whatever the sideboard rating is, right? So, like, we don't have that, so this card's not good. At least that's my logic until proven otherwise.
From my end, I think that this card, has a specific niche, which is that you want a Cosmo when you're afraid of ongoing abilities. So if there's something specifically in a lane, it could be Cosmo himself, right? It's a Cosmo for Cosmo, or herself, right? It's a Cosmo for Cosmo, right? If your deck requires like pulling off some specific effect that can be just destroyed by an opposing like ongoing ability, like primarily right now Cosmo, but like if there's some on reveal synergies like a Wong deck, right, that can put Echo on turn 1 or turn 2 and then Wong all of its bullshit and do all of those things, then like I can see that this card is good. But I think that if outside of that niche right now, I think it doesn't really have any purpose. So I think maybe there's some strategies out there, it could be Wong-based strategies, that were weak to specific like reactive ongoing effects, that this could be really useful. In the same way in which like sometimes the dog themselves, it acts as that sort of protection for ongoing abilities, right? Your opponent can't Enchantress or Rogue that lane because of Cosmo, but your ongoings aren't affected by Cosmo. So I think it can play a similar sort of like protective role in that way for specific synergies. That makes it hard to rate the card, because like, will it raise the ability of like Wong combo decks? to sort of like not be afraid of certain counterplay. Maybe, but that's sort of where I see this card.
Are we sure those decks are still good?
That's the problem, right? Like you're raising the ceiling of decks that aren't really seeing play already. Is it raising it enough to make them good? Time will tell, but right now, I don't know.
Do we know the specific her specific? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's my hesitation now in wanting to pull the trigger on the spotlights this week. Is, you know, if I look at Hella and that's the one that I want to try to make work, is that worth a spotlight cash? And you know, like W said, it's like it's not really that good now. I mean, do you really, even if you have this, if you get it lined up, is it still going to be that good? It's.
I do think if that's like your style, if you're a Hella guy, if you're a Black Panther guy, go for it. I think this can help you out with those lists. It's not exactly my style of play to just need a combo like that so hard, but you know, a lot of players really enjoy that. So if that's the way you want to play, I mean, this card can really help you potentially.
Do we know the token cost of this card?
It's a Series 5. 6.
Okay. So 6.
Yeah.
So that definitely also, I think, doesn't encourage people to want to sort of get the card, even if it may have some upside in a sort of niche play. But, all right, before we move, go ahead, Glazer.
The encouragement is Iron Lad, right? Like, I need Iron Lad. This isn't a bad thing to get on my way to getting Iron Lad. Yeah. I think if I opened Iron Lad, I would like stop. All right, cool. Let's call it a day. But like, if you're gonna like accidentally open a card, opening a 6,000 token card on your way to Iron Lad's not a bad way to do it.
No.
That was exactly the card that I'm looking for, that I wouldn't be sure if I'd be pulling this week if it wasn't for Iron Lad.
All right. So before we move on to talk about the spotlight caches themselves, which we've referenced here, I just wanted to sort of check our guest's sort of temperature about Jean Grey herself, which was last week's card. We didn't really get to talk about her in practice as much because we didn't get a huge amount of time to play with her last week, just sort of how the episode was scheduled. So, W, sort of give us the TDLR of, I'm sure people can go watch her content and find it about Jean, but where do you think Jean landed?
I think she is a strong card that still hasn't found her place necessarily. And you know, that in time might like be really kind to it. I'm not sure there's a really strong Jean Grey deck entirely right now, but I do think that day will come. I think there's some kind of, in general, ongoing boost kind of stuff that's going to happen in the future where that card just becomes really strong.
WolverThor, Jean is a supporting character of Wolverine, so you should have strong opinions of this.
I actually agree pretty strongly with W here. I think that I think her days to shine is going to come soon, or the Phoenix will rise at some point. I think Bounce makes it really hard for this card to shine like how it's supposed to. And Bounce is everything right now, right? So I still like her. Having said that, I still like her. I'm really happy that I pulled spotlights for her, and I would still recommend somebody to do that prior to the turnover. But she's so easy to work around right now that she doesn't feel as good as I think she probably is meant to.
So I think a lot of what we're doing wrong with her is we're playing her on turn 3. I think despite the fact that she's a 3, she's meant to be played on turn 4 or ideally on turn 5. She's almost like, in a way, similar to Wave. The way I've been thinking of her as I'm playing her in largely Surfer decks when I've cut 5s is I'm thinking of her effect as like a location wave, right? Like, I know they have to play here, therefore I know they can only put so much power out in these other places if they're playing here. The exception is obviously Bounce. Hopefully Thursday. I mean, they're going to nerf Bounce too lightly. Like, they're so predictable with this. It's completely ridiculous. I promised in an article last week that the nerf to Evolutionary would be super light. And lo and behold, the nerfs to Evolutionary is super light, right? The nerf to Bounce is going to be too light. But eventually, like, they're going to piss everyone off for an extra month so we can all complain. And then eventually they will properly nerf the things that are actually breaking the game. And at that point, the, like, turn 5 Jean is going to be fantastic and, like, game winning.
And to jump on that a little bit, also with the Polaris potentially play on turn 5 to free up a lane if they filled it prior to that. I like what you're saying there, Glazer. I think it's very, very wise.
Definitely, I've really found she's pretty strong as Surfer. I played a bunch of Surfer today, playing her on 4, and then playing Sarah into the lane with her, and you wanted to play Sarah, and that eats up your whole turn, right? And that gives you sort of 3 options, right? Or if you're stuck playing Jean on 3, like Jean on 3 into Brood on 4, filling up that lane, and these are cards that can get bumped by your Surfer, are all like plays that sort of like limit your opponent and force them to at least play a little bit into a lane and make the other 2 lanes easier for you to win, I think is a really powerful synergy that I really enjoyed today. So I think she's fine. I didn't like she wasn't like broke that deck open, but I think she was a good upgrade for the deck. And yeah, I think that she's a fun card right now. She might be an oppressive card when Bounce gets nerfed, but I think she's just mostly in the fun space right now. All right, so let's jump into the Spotlight caches then. All right, so go ahead.
Let's not read through everything again. Spotlight caches are out. If you want, everyone on Earth has content explaining what a Spotlight cache is right now. Fundamentally, you can open 1 in 4 cards, but if your collection is big enough, you can open 1 of 3 cards and a variant you didn't really want. Sound right?
Sure.
How do you feel about the system so far? W.
Okay, yeah. Overall, they're going in the right direction. I think if 2 things were fixed, there are no complaints. Make the random variant thing not a thing. Just make it a card you don't have. Let's not be greedy. Just give us that. If we have all the other cards, fine. Random variant, cool. That's a position I'm in. I'm fine with random variant because I have all the cards. Fine. The other thing, just double the size of the awards in the regular caches. They're too small right now. They're pointless. I'm not opening mine personally right now because I don't think the system is going to stick how it is right forever. And the rewards are so small, I don't see any reason to open them in. Like, they're not doing anything for me, so I'll just hoard them. I'm hoarding everything again. We're back where we were, except for it's like we almost feels worse for me, anyways. So yeah, they fixed those 2 things where like those rewards were just doubled, and then the random variant. Let's not do that. I think the system's great.
Wolver.
And I actually was waiting to see what W was going to say exactly, and I hoped it was the duplicate protection, which he hit, where it's like, and I think that is a big deal because when it takes a month to save 4 of these, and, the first 3 or whatever that you open, you get something that you've already had, and I got a Death Chibi variant, which is fine, okay, but it doesn't feel good, and Second Dinner says it, they want people to feel good. Isn't that the whole basis of retreating versus losing or escaping and all that? So it doesn't feel good to do that. And I agree. What the solution is, I think there's a lot of different ideas out there. It could be 1,000 tokens. It could be 3,000 tokens. It could be a number of things. So I don't like that at all. The other part, same thing that W said, is the regular caches they're just trash. I'm going to say it, they're trash. I was doing in a video to opening, just because who doesn't like an opening video? You just do them here and there to fill space on a day for YouTube. You don't have other content. And I literally stopped in the middle of it going, this sucks for me. Nobody's going to want to see this. And I'm doing the same thing W's doing. I'm just not going to open them. And Glenn made a comment that if you want to hoard them because you think they're going to change, that's up to you. They may never change. I don't know. But what are we losing out on if we don't open them? You know what I mean? Like, what's it, 120 openings for tokens before you get a Series 5? Like, okay, cool. I don't know. So high arching, I think it is a step in the right direction, even though a lot of people don't like it. We do get more cards. It's a great catch-up mechanic for new players, getting new Series 4 and 5 cards earlier. But I think there's some seriously missing flaws in this system that need to be fixed, hopefully quickly.
It's a solution for casual players, for people who can't think like casual players because they're too far in. right? Like, in order to succeed with this system, you have to min max like a maniac. You have to like carefully consider everything for months in advance, and like with imperfect information, make your best guesses and be super invested in order to have a chance to, like, as a casual player, get everything you really want. And that's antithetical to the idea of a casual player, which is who they're supposedly trying to help, right? Like, those people are open and getting a shitty variant, or like let's say you get like Tribunal, you're like, but I wanted Gene or Null. Like, what the fuck am I doing with Living Tribunal? And like, some people, like, I happen to like Living Tribunal, right? But most people who are going to open this card are just going to be kind of sad that they didn't get another thing. And like, they didn't hoard caches, they just opened the one they had for that week, and now they're miserable, right? You've taken something that should be joyous. Right after Null didn't go down into Series 3, when they didn't warn us, I opened caches that night. And when I opened Null, my overwhelming feeling was frustration. I was frustrated and disappointed that, like, this card that I should have been able to use a free resource on, I had now used one of my, like, 1 in every million Series 4 opens. And, like, they are taking things that should be joyous and making them upsetting. And I don't think that they understand that. And for the love of all that is holy, I like Glenn. I like what he's doing. Hire someone to do all of that communication, and then don't let anyone else do it. Because Glenn going, you can hoard it if you want, but we're not going to change it, is not a good look. It's just, it's like mocking, like, and even if that's not the intent, because I don't think it's the intent, like mocking the people who are upset. Going, haha, we know better than you. You can't have that attitude. Like, just
Yeah, I had this conversation through some replies on some of my content, and I got a lot of that today, oddly enough. And I hadn't seen, outside of the Tucker comment, which, I'm sure you guys saw the list and all that. I found more funny than anything personally. Yeah, I was just like, this is legendary status to me. This is hilarious. I actually love it. But I generally agree that I love what Glenn does because he's doing something he probably shouldn't. From like a developer side, like normally the community doesn't have access to somebody like that. So I love having him answer things. But it is kind of a tough road to walk because of the reasons you mentioned. So I'm interested to see what they do. I don't want to shut them off because I've seen community managers they basically are just politicians that never tell you anything. And I hate that road. I hate it. So I don't know. I prefer Glenn stepping on something every so often and just getting mad, but that's me.
I prefer it too, but I don't think it's good for the long-term health of the game.
And that's
also,
what
Oh, go ahead, Debbie.
That's just what I'm most concerned about with all of this is the long-term health of the game. I don't want this game to die, but like, I don't know how to introduce this game to people right now, and especially casual people. It's just, there's so much going on, and it's so hard to kind of figure out how to get cards in a card game. They're close, but they still just need to go back to the drawing board a bit and make this a little more right.
I say this all the time, but how have they still not figured out how to make getting to Series 3 not be terrible? Like, you care about the casual player, you care about the new player. The first thing you need to do, you don't need to worry about us. Just give us more tokens. Like, let us get the cards. We're going to give you our money. Like, we're all in here, hook, line, and sinker at this point, right? Like, give us stuff. We're going to give you stuff. Just, we've got a nice symbiotic relationship. Leave us be. Figure out Series 3. They've done nothing for Series 3. Could you imagine getting to Series 3 and staring at 94 cards and getting one free a month and otherwise just being like, oh my God, I hope I get something that makes a deck?
No, I can't.
Like,
I can't. And like, yeah, again, we're all locked in. You can do what's right by us pretty reasonably. Focus on these new players, focus on these casuals and the mid-tier players, please, so this game can stick the test of time. I want this game to last a long time. I want there to be more people enjoying these kind of content. I don't want to see numbers going down. I don't. And I know they don't either, so it's very confusing how they keep doing things that make me think numbers are going to go down. No.
Well, that was depressing.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything else to add?
On a positive note, I'm actually curious to run some numbers on the new system with the Series 3. I hadn't yet. When you guys mentioned that, I pulled up the Snap Zone, the graphic that Corrales does for the reserve counts. And I do want to run the Series 3 numbers in there because I know you get two opportunities now for the Series 3 card out of the 9. And then obviously you get your 1 monthly free pick. And then in the spotlights, you should be getting roughly 4 new Series 4 or 5 cards a month. But I don't know what it is to get Series 3 complete. What was that? That was about 5 months prior to the system, 4 to 5 months, depending what you're spending. So I'd be curious to see what the actual numbers are now with that 2 out of 9 in there. I just don't know.
Me neither.
All right. So, well, let's look what's in these junk boxes, I guess, between now and the end of summer for high school folk teachers and students. So this upcoming week, which will go live while we're recording this and have long been live after you're listening to this, we've got Echo, Iron Lad, and Kang. July 25th, we've got Legion, High Evolutionary, and Darkhawk. That brings us to the end of the Phoenix season, and I think it's we'll come back over this again. I'll read it for our loyal listeners. But what do we sort of think about this in future weeks? So what do we think about this schedule in general? I think probably the next 2 weeks read to me as sort of very strong within the context of the Spotlight, excepting the Spotlight caches exist. I think it's sort of 2 weeks of strong lineups. But what do you all think?
Well, so for me, this is Wolver. I think that, Echo, like we mentioned earlier, is very niche. I think Iron Lad sort of carries that week a little bit. But even with that card, you've got to have a good deck. I think without good cards in your deck, Iron Lad is just a 4/6, right? The next week, now, if you don't have High Evolutionary Darkhawk, like, you'd be mad not to open for that week. It's just, those are two of the better cards in the game in general. Yes, High Evolutionary took a chip to the shoulder, not a big hit, but a little one. Darkhawk is still around playing. He's a good card. Legion, man, while I think it can be a very interesting, fun card, like, how often are you going to play a location-changing card at 5/8? You can play Storm on 4 and him on 5 on that location and close things down? Or, I guess maybe that could work, but, I don't know. So for that week, I think High Evolutionary and Darkhawk carry it, but if you've already got them, you're skipping. And then I think Mirage is still the Phoenix season, technically, right? That next week, August 1st. So Thanos, to me, carries that week. But I do think some people are sleeping on Mirage a little bit. I think it's anytime you can see what your opponent might have, it's not super expensive. And I think, what does it give you?
2.
Another power? 2 power? Okay. So, it gets their card in a little better. So, and look, even Mold's got some uses. I wouldn't open that week for Master Mold, but if you don't have them and you pull them, it's not the end of the world. You could throw them in I don't know. Does anybody even play Ronin? I don't know. Maybe not. But so I think, generally speaking, High Evolutionary and Darkhawk, along with the Thanos, Mirage, are sort of the winners there. And if you really want Iron Lad, I suppose, like me, I'm opening for Iron Lad, but that's just because of the situation I'm in. And sad I didn't even mention Kang.
Yeah, I know I was just being depressing, but on a really positive note, I do think the lineups here are all pretty. There's reasons to like a lot of what you're seeing with the lineups. Like Iron Lad, in my opinion, potentially the best card in the game. It's kind of a hot take, but I just am there with that card over the last few weeks. Kang is Series 6 forever, so if you get it, at least you got it. Or Series, or whatever, High Series forever, so at least you got it. That's good. Echo, we've talked about Echo. The next week, High Evolutionary Darkhawk, great cards. Can't go wrong. If you don't have those, that's great for you. Legion's consolation because, new card. Then the week after, Thanos, same bit with Kang. If you don't already have it, it's actually a really, really good card, unlike Kang. So, and it's not easy to get, so that's great. Like, you're getting to see all these these big bad cards 4 in a row like this, that's pretty encouraging and not something I totally predicted with Spotlight caches before they released the schedule. So that's something to be really positive about for sure. And yeah, I can. Mirage, I do want to touch on. I'm not underrating that card. I think that's easily the best card we're getting out of the Phoenix season, potentially even over Gene. We'll see overall, but there's a lot to like here. Coming out of the depression from earlier into some nice positivity, there is a lot to like here.
So I have exactly one complaint about all of this. I think this is actually all really cool. I want to know what for August is a Series 5 release and a Series 4 release. And the data mines say everything is Series 5, but I'm looking at August 22nd. That's X-23, Nebula, and Silk. And I cannot imagine coming up with both Nebula and Silk that X-23 is going to be Series 5. I don't think they're going to put 3 Series 5 into one bundle like that. Although they are with Iron Lad, Echo, and Kang, right? So maybe I'm just wrong. But if the second month they do this, maybe we're not doing straight to Series 4 anymore. This community is going to explode, right? Think about the complaints, and then hey, you can't even buy any of these for cheap with tokens. Everything is Series 5 is going to be such a bad look for them. If they're planning on making something Series 4, they've released a new system that incentivizes planning. Let us plan. And B, please don't immediately take away straight to Series 4. It would be so bad. All of that said, I think it's very likely that every new card in August is better than every new card in July. I think Lady Deathstrike is very likely to be really strong. I think X-23 is going to be a mainstay in Destroy, and I think Silver Samurai is the best card in the 2 months, period. I think Silver Samurai is going to be absolutely busted. 4/5, discard the lowest cost card from each hand. So it enables your stature. It chucks your Dakin's Muramasa shard. If you just run Wolverine or you run Swarm, it's an enabler for that. That's going to get rid of a card. It just does. It works with Zabu. It works with the Darkhawk decks. I think Silver Samurai is going to be damn near busted. And I also think that's why it comes with Kitty Pryde, who they gave everyone for free in Spider-Man 2099, who's been firmly mid. I think he's fine, but firmly mid. I think the reason they're giving the big bads in July is that the July cards are sort of middling. And that's the reason we've got you could have this through season pass, or this is Series 4, or Silk, or 29. Oh, we're not actually sure this is great. It's fine, but it's not great. So you can have these with our other powerful releases.
Yeah, I think they're very conscious about this. I think there's a reason they're finally giving easy access to Darkhawk, Hai, Iron Lad, Thanos, even Galactus to an extent, with what we can all agree has been one of the weaker seasons of card releases. Mm-hmm. It's conscious, it's smart on their end, and I think it should be appreciated.
So you know what card we're not seeing? The card that I think every video I'm getting asked about this card more than Jeff lately. You know what card everyone wants that's not here? Hitmonkey. Everyone's dying for Hitmonkey, and we know the first week of September too. It's Jeff and crap, I think, but Jeff, Null, and something else mediocre. Ghost Spider rare.
Ghost Spider.
But there is no Hitmonkey on the horizon, which makes me real nervous about what they're planning for Bounce.
Yeah, we should know. Hopefully, I think he. I mean, I know we're that's off topic, but I think he's one of the cards that get hits this week.
God, I hope so.
We'll see.
We shall see in a few short days. Our loyal listeners will possibly even be living in the reality where that has already existed, but we can't manifest that right now. So I think it's worth jumping right into our core topic. Glazer, why don't you explain how this process is going to work with the top 10 sleeper decks in Marvel Snap for July 2023?
All right, we're using mostly the same format we did for top 10 decks in Marvel Snap with Den. So this is Los and Wolver both submitted 3 decks. Roy and I came up with 4 more. The decks aren't on tier 1 or tier 2 of the Marvel Snap Zone tier list. That was the line I decided to use because that tier list is done strictly by stats and play rate. So these decks lack either the stats, the play rate, or both to have made it to that list. Now, as we go, you're not going to be able to see the names as we talk because of the way Google Slides decides to update things. However, in the show notes, the slides will be there and you will have the actual full list, and we'll be reading it to you to make sure that you're clear on what the list is. We're going to rank the top 10 sleeper decks by, and if we have if we absolutely can't agree, we'll just vote on position for higher or lower for a deck, right? And we're going to go through. Everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge me if my decks are at the bottom.
I put a negative deck on there. You'll be fine. Okay.
Oh, thanks for feeling for me.
Our top 10 contenders alphabetically, and we're going to look at a deck list for each. Number 1, I just straight up cheated. It is a tier 1 deck mixed with a tier 2 deck. It is Safety's Bounce Surfer. Deck, and these are in alphabetical order again for the time being. Number 2 is Comfort Thanos. That's the deck W won the Snap Battle Arena with. Honestly, by just kind of outplaying everybody, but hey, the deck's pretty good too. You beat the crap out of people. 3, W submitted Good Cards Darkhawk, which, I'm just going to straight up say the stats are still through the roof on, and everyone stopped playing, and it boggles my freaking mind. 4, we've got Hella Tribunal, because I love Roy. 5, we've got Negative. We've got the Sims Negative that reached top 4 of a Snap Battle Arena or a Snap Fan Opener, one of those. We've got 6, we've got Wolver's Nim Jacinto. That is the deck Jolly Roger made that basically does the Nimrod Shuri trick, but also does the Invisible Woman Taskmaster trick, and we'll explain all of that more carefully when we get closer. Wolver also has a Phoenix Nimrod, which is a move and destroy deck. It's really cool. I'm doing a video on it for this weekend because that deck is real nice. We've got W with the Red Skull Kitty, which I am apparently the low man on, but we'll get more into that when we get there. And lastly, I submitted a Thanos Death just because I think it's underrated and no one really plays it, and I don't know why. All good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Now
You don't have to, because deck 1 will be Safeties, ending it right here. This is the Sarah deck that runs Kitty Pride and Silver Surfer, and it's basic, and it's running fundamentally the lower end bounce package from Kitty, Bast, Angela, and Hitmonkey Mysterio with a bunch of 3s and Beast to basically destroy the board with power. The Brood spot remains the swing spot in this deck. Sometimes that Brood spot is Nakia, because playing Bast and then playing Nakia on 3 is an amazingly good feeling. And sometimes that is Wolfsbane. But this deck, so Safety has an 87% win rate with this deck. It's completely freaking stupid. It dies horribly to wave. But it, I beat Sandman with it in Conquest Gold the other day without too much trouble. It's just crazy, crazy strong what it can do. Jean, this is where I'm oh, Jean should just be a play on 4 or 5, because in this deck when she does that, you just win. Any thoughts on the deck before we compare it to deck number 2?
I don't know this one that well personally, but yeah, until you said that, I'm what is Jean doing here? But looking at the curve, it actually makes that you never want to play it on 3 with this deck. If you're playing this card, if you're playing Jean Grey on 3 in this deck, you're in a losing position. Having the liberty to be able to play it on 4 with the Kitty Pride is pretty nasty. So I do love the look and idea there.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. It's a combination of some other decks that I've been playing a little bit, but not quite what I've done. And yeah, I think at the surface of it, I like it, especially for the reason you said. If you can play Jean late, you're playing with all these other cards early. Yeah, that can be fun. I don't have Jeff, but I might
Jeff is
try this later.
entirely unneeded in this deck, although you do need Hit Monkey. The other thing is,
Yeah.
like, it's very frustrating in a lot of Sarah decks to not hit Sarah, and in this deck you just go like Jean and other 2-drop, and you're totally fine on 5.
Yeah, no, the
Right.
lines here are really great. I'm seeing them play out. Like, you have such a good turn. You have the obvious bounce turn 2, 3, and then you have this great turn 4. Because usually the bounce turn 4 that's great is Kitty Pryde Beast, and now you get a backup option of that with Jean Grey, and that's really nice to have. Or Brood or Bishop, whatever. You just get the lines are really nice in this list. I like Safety's design here a lot.
My only objection is this isn't really a sleeper deck. It's just like
I messaged the group chat. I said, "Is this cheating?" And no one said no. You could have said no.
I'm not familiar with this. So I think it kind of counts.
Yeah. So it's smashing together tier 1 decks in a way that no one else is, right?
Yeah.
I like
Powerful.
it. I do. I think it. If it doesn't check the boxes you mentioned earlier, then it's technically sleeper, right?
Yeah, I look at it and do I even like? I know we do need Sarah. But I kind of don't even want Sarah in this list. I almost feel like we can get away with that.
You can 100% get away without Sarah. Sometimes you're playing just Beast on 5 and not Sarah.
Yeah.
But like there are those times where you've got like, oh, my final turn if I play Sarah is Mysterio, Hit Monkey, right? And then like Surfer Brood.
You have the nuts.
And you're just like, what did I just do?
Yeah. It's cool. I like it.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to deck 2, and then we'll decide which of the 2 decks we want to go as number 1 for now. So I guess, W, you get to explain your deck. This is your Battle Arena winner.
Yeah. So this is a list I've been playing in these Swisses for like a few months now. And I kind of put it on the bench the last month or so. I've just been messing around with Darkhawk, good card stuff for like the entirety of Conquest release. And then some really savvy top players, Anomaly, KJB, were playing their own kind of version of this list with like just way more tech stuff. And they were having great success. I think they both won different tournaments in the last couple of weeks with them. I was like, I'm going to bring out my old baby. Because I in the past, I had made a top 8 cut with this before. Like my last big 3 Swisses, I played this list. And the last 2 rounds, I went 5-2 in both. Made top 8 cut in the first one. Just missed top 8 cut in the second one, which was really disappointing because one of those losses was just an internet DC on my end. Like, I should have made that top cut too. So, I mean, this list for me, or like a version of this list, the shell of this list is made 3 top 8 cuts in a row, basically, for me, essentially. And this time it took me over the top finally, because even though it loses so hard to what I beat in the finals, a Darkhawk good cards list, I managed to finally get past that hump in the finals yesterday. And it's got a pretty clear line. It does one thing well. It plays 5 drops. And it plays them early. And so because of that, we, can do a lot of interesting things with lockdown. Thanos in general is just still as strong as it's ever been in a lot of ways. The stones are so underrated still. This list just has a lot of really great lines and you can find a lot of ways to win.
I played this for a solid hour and a half today, and I love it. Everything but Luke Cage. I don't think Luke has much business in the deck anymore.
He was a flex spot. That same group of savvy players I kind of like talk game with has been obsessed with Cage lately. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, because like that could be Chavez, that can be Daredevil, that can be. I never got to test it, but I was curious how like Angela would play there. You can play a lot of different things in that spot. I decided to go with Cage. It didn't really do much for me in the tournament, but at the same time, it didn't really hurt me either. It's a luxury, This deck does same with Cosmo. It's kind of a luxury here. Like the rest of it all does what it does. You can't replace it, in my opinion. And then you can kind of just throw in 2 cards in those 2 spots, however you feel.
So I really like Cosmo because no one's playing Cosmo anymore, so it's a very easy got 'em.
Mm-hmm. No, it does great things it's not like a turn 3 play. Like I know when I posted this, someone was like, "Oh, why would you put that in there with Shang? It just messes up your Shang." Like, because you're not. If you're playing Cosmo on 3 with this list, you're in trouble. That's not really its purpose. It's there to in Conquest specifically. Once you've really figured out what your opponent's doing and how their player styles, you can mess up a beast. You can mess up their surfer. You can mess up their destroy plan if you get a good read on how they play. It's not even for like the first game of a Conquest. It's for those later games. You almost, and if you never play it, that's fine. There's plenty of cards in your deck you never play, but it can potentially steal cubes. And this deck is hard to get. Like, that's the biggest problem with this deck, is that it's almost impossible to get 8 cubes. So you need to be stealing, because like once you win with a lockdown, there's retreating, right? Like you're not getting 8 cubes with this list. So you have, Cosmo is one of those cards that can help get you to the end faster.
So I know why armor's not here, because 1-drops are fine, but they're not like the point, right?
Correct.
I think with the next season's destroy stuff, armor might actually be the right call.
It's hard. You really like, and that good card, stock card I saw in the finals had Killmonger, and you kind of just have to play knowing all your 1-drops are going to die. But at the same time, if Professor X protects them, so if you're playing your good 1-drops into your Professor X lane and you have that in mind, and you're not counting on your other winning lane to have 1-drops, it doesn't actually affect things as badly as you'd think.
So I'm not worried about the 1-drops. I'm worried about like a 4-power Lady Deathstrike, or like I'm worried about like when people are trying to kill X-23 4 times, and you can just win that game, get the immediate concede by dropping an armor on that lane. Right? Like that, my theory is like that's why I don't give a shit about it now. I'm just trying to like think toward going forward, like as the meta evolves. Like I'm assuming next season will be full of many more destroy decks and cards, right? And if it is, then I think that armor might be the play. Right now, the only game I've lost with this was a wrong guess on a 50-50 Professor X. And like it was a real 50-50. There was just like there was nothing in either spot. It was just like, all right. And it was 4 cubes, and I was like, I don't want to play for another fucking 15 minutes. Just, you know what I mean? Retreat. Just like, let's see whether this lost the 50-50, lost the game. So I think I'd go Daredevil now, but I like the Angela idea a reasonable amount too, especially with Jeff.
Yeah, I tested Daredevil, and I didn't find it completely necessary. I kind of just trust my ability to figure it out. And I'd rather leverage that card for something else that affects the game a little more. Like if I'm losing to myself, not being able to figure it out, fine. Kind of. That's just how I see it.
So I am curious to hear from you how you play into the Professor X with what you're putting where. Obviously, Jeff is a benefit, but how are you picking your Professor X lane when it's not a 2 blanks 50-50 type situation? What
at
are
the
you
beginning,
leaning
I'm
towards?
kind of giving away my secrets a bit, but I also already won the tournament, so who cares?
Oh, I mean, and look,
No,
if you got to keep them safe,
it's fine.
we
This
can
is special
talk
for the
offline.
people who listen to the podcast. Yeah, 1-drops, far right lane, blind always. You go over there, and you because you are running Claw and Iron Lad that hits Claw way more than you'd think. You are always thinking Professor X middle or right. Always, you have to have that game plan mentality the entire time. The way I see it, the way the mentality of players are, they're least likely to play in the far right the first few turns blind. So if you're building your 1-drops over there, it's more likely Professor X will win there on 4. So I'm always playing that way. From there, obviously, it becomes just how the game is played out and what you want to do with Professor X. But still, I'd love to always at least have it middle or right. Very rarely left unless it's a location type issue.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
I was playing blind mid most of the time as I was playing the deck. And I was trying to save a Space Stone in case I screwed myself.
Yeah.
Like I thought Space Stone had a lot of extra value as I was just playing things sort of like into weird places.
No, it does. And that's one of your like safety valves. But at the same time, I forget who did. Somebody did the math where like playing the blind is just fine. Like it's actually more beneficial. And most players still will just default mid. So I'm always trying to build right at all costs, because if I can get an advantage on right when they're down and they're building left, most likely, and I'm usually kind of trying to throw left, to be honest, like, it works out.
Cool. Any other thoughts, or we get to decide which of these decks is the current number one?
I'm biased on this one, obviously.
Look, this won a tournament. I'm fine putting it as the number one, at least for now.
I don't know if it's number one, but it can be high.
Well, it's this versus Bounce for now. It's just those two decks. This against Bounce, Surfer, Sarah.
How did you do against Bounce with this one, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I got it.
In the
I can't
tournament
remember
at all?
if I got in the Swiss, but I got it in the quarters against a really strong player, Leandro Leal, who I respect a lot. And I was pretty nervous going into it just because it's a top player with a top deck. But I managed really well. It did fine. The lockdown is so good against it, and Cosmo can do a lot of work against it as well. So it worked out well.
All right, I guess we can put this in number one for now, but it's going to have a lot of competition, including another one of W's decks, which is the next one, I believe, in our list, which is Sarah Stats. All right, W, tell us about this sort of pile of numbers go up that you've got, so you're serving us for this round.
So I sent in this version. This is the version with Medusa and Sarah. The main thing I want to touch on with this deck is that if we just remove Medusa and Sarah, that's the deck. Everything else outside of Medusa and Sarah, that is the shell that is so good, especially while Bounce is so good.
You're saying I should be playing Legion in that Sarah spot?
100. If you want to, I mean, go for it.
I do. I really do.
You can. I think those are the two flex spots. And from how I got to this deck was before it was Medusa and Sarah. The very first iteration was Stature Black Bolt, and then from there I was like, now I'm trying Arrow Miles Morales. The idea was like 5-card that does things and a card that's discounted. And I ended up doing this one, and I actually kind of, I guess, like this one the most. I know a lot of other players think the Arrow version's best. I think that's where KM
I don't
sits.
like that version.
I think they're both almost equal, personally. But the shell is really what I would focus on here. I think the shell itself is insane still. It's so good, and I don't know why I don't see more of it.
When I played the Arrow, it wasn't doing nothing. Like, it kept pulling like a Mysterio clone.
This deck feels better to play because Sarah feels better off Iron Lad, and it just feels really nice on 5 when you haven't hit your Zabu. But the Arrow and Miles version, I do think it's, even though it doesn't feel as good most of the time, I think it's in a pool of like Conquest games, it would be equal. I think you just have to be smarter about your retreats and stuff.
But that's Legion spot, so like,
Yeah,
I think we're confused here.
Yeah, it can be Legion.
I'm not even kidding. I bet you there's something there.
No, it might be. 100%. I'd have to look at it.
Like, this deck just doesn't, like, when I played it, it just doesn't want to get screwed, right? It doesn't want to get like scammed out by I played a lot of this too, because this is exactly my style of deck. But this deck doesn't. Oh, go ahead.
How often? I was going to ask, how often are you guys playing Iron Man into this, or is this more for Iron Lad to hopefully copy?
And if you have to play Iron Man, especially in games where like it becomes a 2-laner, or like in games where you get like certain lanes like the Nexus, it's so good. It's such an underrated card, but it kind of brings everything together here. This is an Iron Lad deck. It's called Darkhawk Good Cards, but this is an Iron Lad deck more than anything, and it really can show Iron Lad strengths.
Like, I play Iron Man on 5 a fair amount if I don't have Sarah, especially if I have Zabu. Right? Like, if I know that they're going to be able to go really tall and I don't have my Invisible Woman Killmonger stuff, i.e. Bounce against Bounce, like, I have no problem just dropping an Iron Man on 5 and being like, I can still play like a Shung and a Darkhawk next turn without any trouble.
Yeah, Enchantress really doesn't exist. It's kind of crazy.
Well, Rogue does, though. I get rogued a lot. But, like, you're playing Surfer. It's not like, it's like, oh no, this is Surfer on turn 5. You know it's Surfer by then.
Right.
And if that's the case, you can always just throw it behind your Invisible Woman, depending on how you've been building. So it does a lot. It's really good.
Okay.
I mean, it's just crazy strong. Any thought for Silk for Medusa?
I played that. I played that version. I tested it instead of Medusa. I just like Medusa more. It's better with Iron Lad as well. You just got
Oh god, yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. Yes.
the only downside with it is that Iron Lad can get shanked after you play its middle, and sometimes that hurts. But you live with that. It's the same with it getting Dark Hawk. You just take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is very underrated. Almost more now, like people are playing that Thanos list and still no one is playing this. I almost want to like put this higher. I'm not going to, but I think it's a very strong list.
I'm fine anywhere 1 to 3, and it would not surprise me. And like this was just pure. I just went and listed as descriptively as possible for each deck. It wouldn't shock me if these are decks one. Our first 3 decks end up being decks 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, they're all three.
Yeah.
I'm just flipping between them right now, and I'm just going like, they're all, like these are all good. I mean, it's.
I think I'm for this in the 3rd spot because Medusa and Sarah aren't perfect, and that perfect spot doesn't exist yet.
No, and it doesn't. I was having this conversation with KM Best because he hates Sarah, and I was like, well, but we also agreed that Arrow sucked. I'm like, whatever we play there is like the worst part of the deck. That is what it is. If this ever got to a point where those 2 cards were like on par with the rest of this deck, it's the best deck in the game, maybe in my opinion. But it does have obvious weak links, I think, in those 2 positions. But everything else is great.
So, sorry. Go ahead, Roy.
I was going to transition us to the next deck.
Oh wait, we got to rank it first.
Yeah, well, I was going to say this. Based on the discussion here, it's obvious. I think 3 in our list here. Just I think everybody views this deck as good, but as W said, it has some weak links in the form of Medusa, Sarah. Maybe some people in the hive brain of Marvel Snap community can solve that, but I think right now this sits pretty comfortably in 3. Any objections?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
None
let's
here.
move on to the next deck, and Glazer is going to make an argument for why this deck should be number 1. And for me, just looking at these pile of cards here, it inarguably is number 1. But Glazer's going to present some arguments right here for why it's number 1.
I mean, as of where we are now, it's going to end up being number 4, right? However, I still think this deck is a really powerful and good deck. This seemed like such a pile of shit when I built it and played it. I was like, what is this going to do? And then, like, I played a game and, like, Iron Man, Onslaught, and Infinite popped into one lane. And I was like, fuck you. And then Tribunal popped out. And I was like, oh, I get it. And, like, is the combo going off every game? No, but it goes off so much more than it looks like, thanks Magic. And Magic is a little terrifying because Surfer is back, so I think this is better on ladder than in Conquest right now. But, like, I don't know how to say it, except this is a real deck. Like, it doesn't feel like it, but, like, any good player who had good snapping or retreating habits will easily hit Infinite and climb with it. This feels very much like something Hasa would play to a really high rank. It's like it's also the only good Howard the Duck game in the entire game of Marvel Snap.
I actually have a question about Howard here for you, Aaron.
Yeah,
let's say you're someone who could be on this podcast who doesn't own Howard the Duck. What would you replace Howard with here? Or do you just don't play the deck without Howard?
I don't care about Howard. I just run Sunspotter Nebula, which are probably just better. If we're being totally honest, like Howard should probably just be Nebula anyway. I don't really care what I'm pulling, right? Like I'm gonna go try and pull something big. Everything in this deck is worth pulling except Invisible Woman and Electra. So like I'm always going hunting for that card, and it's a little sad if it's MODOK while Hell is in hand, but like that's what their tree button's for.
A little sad is a bit of an understatement, but you are correct. When that's the thing about Helidex, there's nothing better than when she gets discarded, but when you don't want her to. But anyway, all right, W or WolverThor, thoughts on this combo deck?
I mean, I think it's a high risk, high reward situation. I think Glazer got it right. This is probably going to be the fourth of the bunch we've looked at right now. Yeah, it's got potential. And like I mentioned with Echo earlier, I'm definitely looking at something for that. I myself might even get riskier on that one and have some of the lower cost cards in this, but it's, I could, yeah, if you get the nuts on it, yeah, that's great. I think it's going to be really good. But like I know one of the decks I've got, sometimes that can be rare too, and it's only got sort of 2 lines to go down. And so, yeah, I mean, I like it. I'd play it. I'm not sure I'd conquest with it.
I think Glazer's spot on that we're like, if you can leverage discipline with this list, it can do really well in ladder or conquest. I know, like, even some tournament players believe in bringing like Hela as like a second list if it's a tournament setup like that, just because if they trust in their ability to leverage their discipline and know how to snap. It's not my style. I don't like playing all or nothing lists like this too much. I like a little more control in my list, but I get the appeal for this list for sure.
So you also win a reasonable number of games, especially against Surfer. And like this is especially good against not the Lambie Surfer, your regular Surfer, by going something like Electro, Iron Man, Magic if necessary, Onslaught, Tribunal, and just saying you stormed a lane, I win that storm lane, and one of those other 2 lanes isn't as big, and that's just mine. If they're not running Rogue, you just like roll that matchup straight over. I've done it quite a few times already, and like it's so silly that this meta deck just like gets rolled over by this bullshit, but it completely does.
Yeah, Living Tribunal is very good against Surfer in general. Like I was playing the Mason Clark version of it for a while today, and it did a good job of pretty consistently beating these kind of like lane controlled and go over the top decks by just spreading a solid amount of power. I mean, there is the option. I do think the backup plan of playing a listener, nobody can see my scare quotes here, but an honest Living Tribunal game. Although no game where you like win with a Living Tribunal is honest in any way. But I think it does give the deck a little bit more flexibility than the sort of maybe more traditional pure discard Hela. So do we all think that this one should land on number 4? Any objections?
Yeah, definitely 4.
All right, so let's jump over to the next one, which is, I hope folks are not too negative in their discussions of it, as Glazer lays it out for us. Aaron, what is this deck and why is it obviously, when people aren't being negative, going to be number 1?
So this is Sim's negative deck. He's been playing it in various Snap Battle Arena tournaments. He came in 4th in one, 3rd or 4th. I guess they're the same thing. It runs basically the exact negative package you'd expect with Bast, Iron Man, Mystique, negative, Thor, Magic. But what it does with its Null Zola combo is it runs Yondu and Shang-Chi as a way to get extra value, and it makes the deck, like, I don't know how to put how much more consistent, but it feels so much better with those 2 cards. It's completely absurd. I am like chemically incapable of winning with a negative deck, but even I can win with this.
Yeah, this is like the same family as Hela, right? Like just like I'll in on a plan. If we don't get the plan, we're screwed. But this definitely has more lines that I can follow and like find ways to victory. If we don't hit a negative, then like a Hela not hitting a Hela. And for that reason, I personally like this more. And I do like the construction here a lot for a negative list.
Negative decks were one of the first decks when I started playing that I enjoyed. So I would pick a negative deck over Hela for sure. I've not, you don't judge me too hard, but I have not played Jane with a negative deck yet. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of using it and pulling out those zeros after the magic and stuff too. You can just
Jane thing
destroying
is
that last
great.
turn.
I've seen in the games I've played against it, because I haven't played that much of it, at getting me, if they're snapping well, they're going to steal cubes from you. Because if they know their line, like if they've got it in hand and they're snapping on like one with just negative Jane in hand, it's so good. Like, I obviously don't know what I'm seeing when they're doing that on one or two. Like if they haven't played their stuff, even they were playing Sunspot on one into that, I'm like, okay, well, it's just a Sunspot. I get why you maybe snap, but that Jane can like just create way more cubes for sure.
You can get
So,
real
like,
stupid.
Run, right? Like the second that Jane comes down, don't stay in that game. Like just bounce.
No.
Like there's nothing good is happening to you for the rest of that game. Just go away.
Yeah, it's like W said earlier. Like if you can be disciplined with your snapping in these, you will win a ton of cubes. You just, maybe not a great win rate per se, but the cube returns can be.
Its cube.
Yeah, I love
Its
negatives.
cube rate is over 0.5.
Yeah.
So like its win rate is barely 15. Its cube rate is over 0.5. Well, that's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
This Battle Arena tournament specifically, wasn't there like 2 or 3 negative decks, something crazy like that? Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a place. And I think it just takes knowing the list really well. And, that's a lot of this game in general.
So we're okay with this in the current 4th place after a good card Starhawk, but before Hella Tribunal, yes?
Yes.
Sounds good.
And then you can add Mephisto to it at some point.
All right, let's jump into Glazer.
I'm so sorry. You know what card you're going to add to it? And I don't. Ravonna Renslayer. The 3/3 that makes everything with because like if you don't hit negative, now it's still a deck.
Yeah, that could be solid.
This is another one of yours, right, Aaron? This is Jolly. What? Whose is this?
Wolver's.
Wolver's. Oh, it just says.
Oh no, this is mine.
All right, Wolver, lay it out. What is this deck?
So, I like doing, and I have to admit, I was talking with someone on Discord on this, and it's essentially trying to copy. The Taskmaster is going to hopefully copy a doubled up Destroyer. So you put that Taskmaster where behind Invisible Woman, which doesn't get destroyed. So if you Shuri into your Destroyer and then your Taskmaster for your last play, or you Shuri into any high card really, and your Taskmaster can potentially copy it late, and you're just destroying along the way. Wolverine can stay there, Nimrod can stay there. It just sort of is what it is. You can have a sort of nice 2 30-point lane or a 2 18-point lane with just that card and whatever you get from your America Chavez and Destroyer if you can pull your Shuri. And, obviously having Nova and Wolverine out there can help put some points on the board otherwise. So it's not much more than that. It's not a lot of the one thing I don't love about it is that, you look for multiple win conditions. And if you don't pull that Shuri and you're counting on just like a 9 and a 15 and a copy, okay, like maybe that'll work, so it can get slim there, but
you get a decent number of wins when you don't see Shuri out of the Nimrod package. Right, like a lane that has Nova, Wolverine, Nimrod that then you Venom and then you Carnage in another spot, or Venom and then Deathlock in another spot, as the case may be. Like that's not like that's not winning a fair number of games, right? That's like 18 in one lane and 12 and 12 in another that might be unreachable. Like in any of those destroy lanes or your opponent can't reach lanes, like you win those matches straight up.
Exactly. And I do love that Carnage Venom combo late like that, where you're popping them into multiple lanes. You just got to pick which lane you want to lose typically. And then you go, okay, well, I'm going to lose that one and I'm going to pop everything in those other two. I do enjoy playing that even with another one that pops up later. I think I gave you that Phoenix Rond one as well, but it's a similar concept.
W, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think it's a strong list. It follows a straight path. The only thing with these kind of lists, and a lot of Shuri lists run into this problem, is that it can be a little predictable. So it's, as the player of the list, you have to, again, I keep saying this about a lot of these lists, but I think that's what kind of makes them sleeper lists, is you have to be super proactive with your snaps. If you have the line, you have to be snapping immediately on this thing, because if you are late on the snap, they will retreat when they sniff out what you're doing, because it is predictable enough to sniff out.
What's real nice though is you're playing almost nothing the first game, right? So like, let's say you drop an invisible woman and that's it. Turn 1 through 3, they snap on you a lot.
Mhm.
And it's real, like when you don't play anything on 3, it's real easy to get that snap back.
Absolutely.
I like to snap when I play these Shuri types. I do like to snap before I make my turn 4 play, because I've got, like W said, I've got my lineup set up. I've almost played nothing at this point. And, you know, if let's just say hypothetically I played a Nova and a Wolverine or something, they might be thinking, oh, this guy's going to Galactus. He's snapping. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe. And they typically will just stay. And so it's like, all right, nice. I got my Shuri down. I can get my Nimrod down. And this is going to be
Tomorrow's
fun.
deck is literally like 80% this deck, except that like my deck of the day stuff. Revis posted it. It's like, it's instead of the Taskmaster shit, it just runs Galactus and says, go figure out which one of these 6 things I'm going to do. Stop it. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That takes that predictability out of it so much and puts so much pressure on the opponent. That's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that a lot of Galactus, I think, right now when it is being played. It's being played in those positions of just like, you have to think about this the entire game and deal with it. And that is such a strong place for a card to be, that if you can afford to run that card, and this deck can afford to run it. So that makes a lot of sense.
So where do we place? I don't have any strong opinions about this deck. Where do we place this one though? That I can see being a little bit more interesting. It seems to me to be kind of obviously stronger than our sort of combo decks that we just went through. But where does it fit with our sort of more mid-rangey decks that are at the top of our list?
I'll let y'all decide. I'm pretty indifferent.
I don't know if I'm bringing this to a tournament. I mean, W is the tourney, I'll say pro like, right? Like I feel good about stuff that W's putting in there. You know, I like it, but I don't know if I'm ready to put it over those 3. I don't know if I could. I don't know. What do you think, Glazer?
4, but I also think that this is like almost the definitive sleeper deck, right? Like
Yeah.
if your opponent doesn't know what you're doing, if you start dropping these cards, you win the game.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, folks. So make sure you don't sleep on this sleeper of a deck. And that brings us to Patriot Surfer, which is another WolverThor list. All right. So this oldie but a goodie. Tell us all about it, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm not going to sit here and claim to be some pro Surfer or Patriot player, but with Surfer and everything that's sort of happening, and you know, I used to despise Shadow King, but gosh, that card can really just wreak some havoc on so many different things. So I enjoy playing this quite a bit. I like to try to go, it's got a couple different lines, obviously. You know, you've got your Patriot line, you've got your Surfer line with it. I, if possible, sometimes will wave into my Onslaught to bring that in earlier to help with the Patriot mystique, but sometimes it can get a little clunky. I haven't done great things with it. I definitely think this is one of the bottom tier decks that we've had, but man, if I can get some of those lines to happen and you go Invisible Woman, Patriot Mystique, and you still, even just with Ultron, it's like, okay, I mean, that's just a good play. You get points all over the place and you feel pretty solid about it. I was playing around with that Lambie mix of, you know, Patriot the other day, which was sort of interesting. I think you had a Shuri in it as well. I wanted to try to play around with something that was 3s, and I had some outs with Patriot as well. And this is sort of what I came up with.
Yeah, I like it. Surfer obviously has been really good. I saw the Lambie list in the semis of the tournament. So, I mean, people are really trying to innovate with it. The one problem a lot of Surfer lists can have is what you said, the clunkiness. And I kind of see that more with this list than most. But it also has such high nuts potential that kind of offsets that, I'd say. So there's a lot to like here, for sure.
I just don't like Onslaught. I think I like everything about, like, I think this is a really cool list, and I don't like the Onslaught. Like, I think it's too greedy. I know what it's doing here. It's not, like, But like, even if Onslaught was just like Iron Lad, right? I feel like there's a lot more this deck can do.
I want it to be like, I kind of want it to be like something like, even, can we like, I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but there's definitely a 5-drop, not Sarah, that I want it to be. I don't want to say it's Spider-Man, but it's something. We can do something else there and have a few more
Spider-Man.
wins. Yeah. That's where my head was going, but there's probably even something better. Because if we're depending on waving that out a lot, I don't know how often that's going to work, but
Well, and I'll tell you, as soon as Glazer said Onslaught, that was the card I had the hardest time getting out. And that was the clunkiest part about it. And I mean, besides, what else is wave there for, right? I mean, unless you're countering something, but I could see some adjustments there making that dramatically better, because it is very, very, yeah, when you get it, sure, it's amazing. It doesn't happen very often.
So, I mean, at that point, like, even if you were keeping a high cost card, I think I'd rather just have Doom anyway.
potentially,
like,
yeah.
I think I would probably cut Wave and Onslaught and then just run. I mean, I'd probably just throw Wasp in for Wave and then figure out what I wanted to do with the Onslaught spot. I could see Spider-Man being the right decision here. I feel like I very often want to Surfer on 5, which to me suggests I might want another 2 as well.
Yeah.
Which
could just be Jeff.
I can even see Jean being really good here. She's a 3, and like that turn 5 Jean play that we were talking about earlier should work just fine.
Are we married to Chavez? Do we have to keep Chavez as well?
No, I mean, for me, obviously there's only one reason Chavez is ever in there, but
I don't know. There's definitely, I think there is still like a lot of potential with Patriot Surfer. Yeah.
you guys are motivating me to play with this a little bit more later. I'm taking a snip of this and making some notes.
I think that this is going to end up at the bottom because it needs to be changed the most for now. But I can easily see this ending up in like the top 3 or 4. I think there's like actually something here.
Yeah, there's definitely just so much potential in maximizing Patriot, like, and Mystique. What if we just said goodbye Onslaught, welcome Iron Man, and cheesed out a lot of games that way, with like as a backup for Mystique, since we don't have much else for Mystique to be doing. Something like that. I don't know. We could get creative.
So I don't hate just ditching Killmonger and running Debris either.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We are missing Debris. That's maybe where Chavez goes.
Oh,
yeah.
If we want to drop her, because and then Killmonger, obviously, because since we're adding Debris. No, there's lots of things we could do. There's a lot of potential here for sure.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna mess with this too.
Yeah, I kind of want to as well.
Yeah.
Be okay chucking at the bottom for now, and we'll just revisit this in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in like a week or
Absolutely.
so, and we'll do some brainstorming. Yeah.
Yeah, see wherever we land.
That sends us to our next deck, which is originally by Phoenix Rod, but who threw this one into the pile? Was that you, Aaron? Wolver? Oh, this is another Wolver one? All right, Wolver, so tell us about this Phoenix Nimrod move deck.
So this is a deck I absolutely 100% love. It really, I know Phoenix Force is not well received by most. I personally really like it. Now, I only really like it though because there's a couple different paths that you can do here with it. Ideally, in my mind, you get your multiple man, your Hulkbuster, you break it down, and then you get into your Phoenix Force. You can also Human Torch in front of that, and then you're busting those multiple man all over the board. I've gotten 4 or 5 multiple men at like 15, 17-ish power all over the place. There's a backup play with some Phoenix into Nimrod and also Carnage and Inventing into that late as well. Heimdall's there to obviously continually help move the multiple men / Phoenixes around. Taskmaster, now a big thing that people complain about a lot with the Human Torch Phoenix combo is Killmonger. I get it. It's not good. It's tough to play, but if you ever are in Conquest with it and your opponent doesn't have that counter, it's super strong. And then you've got a Taskmaster to potentially copy a massive, massive Phoenix Force Human Torch card. Chavez is there purely for thinning. I don't think if you're playing Chavez in this, you probably should be retreating, honestly. But I really liked it. A lot of times I'd typically snap before, if I had the lineup of multiple man Hulkbuster and then a destroy card and Phoenix in hand pretty early, the only reason I wouldn't snap is because I want to see my locations, or maybe if they're dropped an armor or something, or a Cosmo or something like that. But you snap pretty early, potentially turn 3-4-ish, definitely before you play the Shuri. But even if you get the Phoenix Force out and snap, or before that Phoenix Force, you can get some pretty good cube wins here and get a lot of high potential out on the board. And I've been someone's shaying an entire lane for me. And I was just like, cool, I still have, 30 plus on my other 2 lanes. Thanks. And I've really, really enjoyed playing this list a lot. I haven't tried it too hard on Gold Conquest yet, though. So I'm not ready to be like, no, take it up there and try for your infinite tickets. But I really like playing this deck a lot.
I haven't played enough Phoenix Force, but I have lost to this deck when it rolls, and it does roll when it does roll, it's pretty crazy. That's for sure.
Oh, God.
No, I don't. Go for it.
So you're going to do me a favor. You're going to play this exact deck, but you're going to make Human Torch be Dagger. And, it seems like it's, you're losing an absolute shit ton of power that way, right? You're not getting that, 60 power nonsense that you get, but, you just lose so many fewer games to the stupid Killmonger that's in every goddamn deck right now. It's just Human Torch is just, it feels like a dead card. It feels, and you can't kill it early because then if your Phoenix brings it back later, you're sad. So it just sits in hand, kind of being obnoxious and shitty for most of the game, and it's an absolutely terrible feeling. I play Dagger in that spot, and I like it a lot more. I never play Hulkbuster. I end up running Ghost Spider in that spot. I'm pretty sure Hulkbuster is right. I'm pretty, yeah. I just I like for one of my last turn options, to be after I play Phoenix Force. I think I run 2 move cards. I think I run whatchamacallit. I run Brain. Fuck, I'm so dumb. I can't think of the name of the card. Ghost Spider and Doctor Strange. And one of my last turn plays is Ghost Spider and Doctor Strange to just sort of drag and get bigger with or drag multiple men all over the place. I think Hulkbuster is still right, but I wish there was a way to get that in the deck. It might just be ditch the second move target, just go either Nimrod or multiple man and let that be the plan, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, whenever people tell me Phoenix Force is bad, this deck is, to me, bad into bounce. And I don't think it has many other really bad matchups. I think outside of bounce, it's just crazy strong. I think the 17 things it can do are all extremely powerful. Bounce puts up 30 in every lane, and you're putting up 24, 25 in most lanes, right? And then you just feel sad. Your high rolls just aren't often as high.
You really need to hit that multiple man to get the bounce stuff going. I ran into some. I beat a few, but that's the point of the game is rock, paper, scissors. Sometimes you get your draw, sometimes you don't. So it can be tough into that. And I will say also with the Human Torch, what I ended up finding is it typically is a throwaway card just to get 4 points on late. And so you're probably right. There's some spots there. I hated Phoenix forcing that card.
I could see 4 or 5 different things that Torch could be, right? I don't actually know for sure what the right answer is. But I think there is one. So the other, I think, thing to note is I beat this deck a lot because people do their first Phoenix in the far left lane with multiple man, and that's just straight up the wrong spot. It has to be middle or right. Because you're going to Heimdall and you're just giving up an extra 9 to or greater power thing by playing it in the far left. And people play it in the far left against me far more often than they play it properly. And I just I don't know why that's a complicated play, right? It seems like that should be obvious, but people continually do it wrong.
Yeah, that is very critical. And you talk about that. If you can Iron Fist at the end of turn 4 and then have your Phoenix Force play, right, goes mid,
Mhm.
and then you move it again, right? You know, you got a lot of stuff swinging all over the place.
Any other thoughts? Are we good to rate this one?
Yeah, decks like this, destroy decks and move decks, and obviously this is a combo of the two. They just feel like they're 1 or 2 cards away from me always. We're very close to destroy meta, and I don't know what that card is that's coming. I guess I haven't looked into that stuff that's coming next month. Like you have Glazer too hard, but I feel like we're so close to destroy taking over. And it might just be the kitty nerfs or whatever the nerfs are for the bounce that does it, because there is a lot to like here.
So, like, I think this can be the deck. I don't think Pure Destroy can be the deck because it, like, you just start running Armor and Cosmo and everything, and then the deck stops working. Right?
Yeah, I do think that a list we're coming up on soon might argue, but
So that's fair. Let's put this. I think this is number 4 for now. Are we okay with that?
I'm fine
That
with
puts it above
Yeah, I'm
the previous Nimrod deck, but behind Good Card Starkhawk. I think it can beat Good Card Starkhawk, but like I think that's a very rough matchup.
Yes, I like this one better. Yes, I definitely like
yeah,
this
I'll
one better
default
than
to
the
you
other
on
one.
that.
All right. That
Yep.
brings us to W's last deck, which I believe, yes, is a Spider Ham Shuri Red Skull deck. All right. Why are people sleeping on this deck, W?
Because really good players are playing it. Not me. I haven't been playing this actually that much. Which you know, probably shouldn't have put myself in place to explain it when I'm not playing it much. But I just know a lot of the really strong players are. This is what they want to play right now. I mean, you have 2 really strong players in the title of this list, in KM and Brody. I mean, there's other ones. There's Mickey, who's all about this list. There's What Am I, KJB. Like the list goes on of people who are like singing this deck's praises right now, and I don't see it anywhere. Um, the lines are clear. The power is strong. I do think Captain Marvel should probably just be Vision, but everything else here is just so clean. It makes a lot of sense.
So according Combat played this also in the tournament, like a card off, and he played Vision in the Captain Marvel spot, and he swears that he went 5-2, and he thinks both of his losses would have been wins if he had Captain Marvel in that Vision spot.
That's interesting.
So I have not played this exact version. I built, so I think it was Nerf Herder, but I could have the person wrong. Made this like the second Red Skull was buffed, and I immediately started playing it. Like, so I've been playing this deck for a few weeks. I think Luke Cage might end up being the difference, because I've definitely never had Luke Cage, but there were so many things that could go wrong for this deck that it became really frustrating to play for me very quickly. It was very strong, but unless you had Kitty on 1, I don't think the Shuri Red Skull line is in the best place right now.
No, that's fair. I do think this deck is missing Zero Hard, probably, even if it's just for like Nebula. I don't think Nebula is actually doing that much right here. I would probably replace that with Zero. If I made my own version of this, I'd get a little weirder. But I do think I'm gonna put my trust in the players on this one. Like from what I'm seeing internally, this is a very underrated deck right now, which is why I decided to submit it. I do need to spend a little more time with it myself. But it's interesting to hear the Captain Marvel being lauded over Vision. I would have not thought that.
Look, I'm the low man on this. I don't, whatever it is about this deck, and like I'm still winning with it, but like just it doesn't feel good. Something about this doesn't feel right. I think there's something like there have been a couple decks we've talked about. I think that's why they're on the sleeper list, where like it feels like there's something missing. This is one of those to me. I feel like there's something missing, and I don't know what it is.
That's fair.
Like, is it crazy that like instead of armor, this was like the same base with Sauron and Sauron, Lizard, and Ebony Maw, and
That's
then
the
you just have
version I
more
built.
ways to. Yeah, like that
That's
sounds
the version
better
I
to
built.
me. Like Chong, one spot, I've got a 2-5 here, a 2-7 here. I'm still going to win other lanes.
That's the exact version I built, but I didn't get to do much testing with it. Yeah, I'm curious as well. Just because that second out with Ebony Maw, I know I've never been high on the Sauron line, but I am curious right now after the Red Skull nerf if we could morph this with that and get something really interesting. I had something built. I actually deleted it today. I wish I hadn't. But I might go back to that and see what we can find.
Wolver?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this, and I mean, what's your bad play is you don't get, something great to Shuri. I mean, maybe late Chavez, but I do feel that I could get lost if I don't get a good mix between the highs and lows here. And I'm talking costs there. Obviously, the Chavez is there to help thin. And you're likely to get some of your highs there, so it's probably a good chance. I definitely thought of Zero when looking at this because I don't have Jeff, and that was the first card I thought to replace. And then, like you guys, I started building towards a Sauron deck a little bit to get a little bit more power out there, whether it was Maul or Typhoid or whatever. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I don't mind Nebula and Kitty together, and Spider and Angela. That all feels good. Your armor to go along with any big cards, or your ones feels good. Chavez to thin feels good. Captain Marvel, even if she's doubled, feels good. Same thing with Red Skull and Taskmaster to copy something like that. All of that feels good. Having not played it, I can't say I know how for sure it'd feel, but I could see how. I think Glazer, you said that you played it and it just something didn't feel right. I could see it, but I also would want to play this, even if it's just Zero over Jeff, because like I said, I don't have Jeff.
Well, I will say it's constructed how it is right now, focusing on Kitty more than anything else in the list. That's why we don't see like the Sauron and the stuff we were suggesting, because we don't really want to play on curve. We want to be playing Kitty every game, which does mean if we aren't drawing Kitty, we are not playing optimally with this list. But I know from the people I've talked to that Kitty is the most important card in the deck, followed by Shuri and then Taskmaster. Red Skull is just a backup plan more than anything.
So the Sauron plan works fine with Kitty because then that's your play on 4. Because the goal on 5 is to go Shuri Kitty in one turn.
Correct. But so then how much is Sauron really doing?
So what he's doing is your turn 6 play is supposed to be Kitty Taskmaster, but you're not always going to have Taskmaster. So and that means you can go... It could be... Well, I don't think Red Skull's good. If it's Sauron, I think it's good. I don't think I don't think in the current meta an un-Sauron Red Skull or an unzeroed Red Skull is very good. But I do think that like on that last turn, playing a doubled Kitty with Lizard and Ebony Maw would be good, especially on top of an Angela in one spot.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. No, there's stuff to look at.
I've been playing a Shuri. No, sorry, go ahead, W. I've been playing kind of a Shuri Kitty lately, so somewhat similar to this, but with a little bit of difference. So that's where I'm trying to really look at this and say, I mean, I don't have Captain Marvel. And Glazer, you're right. When you don't, like, even when I double up that Red Skull, there are times like, I still lost that lane. Jeez, like, it just feels so bad if they have anything semi-high because of all the negative effects that Red Skull gives. It just,
you better still hurts. In this meta Spider-Ham that goddamn Iron Man, right? Like if you drop a Red Skull and they play Iron Man in that spot, what do? You
lose.
Like, yeah, like hard, right? Like, and that's a game that snaps happened in. Like, that's not where this just, I'm not trying to be rude to like these many genuinely great players. There's something off here. Like, I've played a lot of Snap. I spend a lot of time thinking about this crap. There's something off here.
Yeah, I can't say too much more not having as much experience. I'm just putting my trust in them on this one. But I can see where you're coming from.
So are we okay putting this somewhere around the Phoenix Rod Nim Jacinto grouping?
Yes.
Where in those grouping? Because I think those three are operating as a group at this point.
This is probably in between them, in my opinion.
Okay, sure, that works for me. All right.
All right.
This our last deck?
Yeah, our last deck, and it's yours, Aaron. It's almost like you planned this. All right, we got
this is trash.
Thanos death list. Tell our loyal listeners why they should dust off their Thanos and jump right into this one.
So Phoenix Force is in here for exactly one reason. Anyone know what that reason is? No? Weekend missions. Phoenix Force should 100% be America Chavez in this deck. This deck is significantly better with America Chavez in that spot, because all you want to do is draw your death stuff on curve so that you can play a cheap death and null. This is one of those classic deaths that just tries to leverage the early I kill things, so I get a lot of power by, like, I've got a big carnage because I ate a bunch of stones. I can wave out my Thanos or my null early. I can deathlock away some stuff to get a super cheap death to play with something else at the end of the game. And while America Chavez is not a very good card, she is a perfectly fine card if the last turn is both her and death alone. As Death Wave long ago taught us. This deck is like, I should have put Pure Destroy, because I actually like Pure Destroy better, but I love Thanos more than, like, Thanos and like some combination of the stats and Darkhawk decks are like, the stats Darkhawk decks and the Sarah decks are like where I live in terms of what I enjoy. And like, this is a Thanos list, so I put the Thanos list in over the Pure Destroy. I think the like Pure Destroy with Deadpool is actually probably a little better, especially once X-23 comes out. But like, the gigantic null in this is glorious, and like, if you're getting a null and a death out, like, you usually have something like a Venom to win another lane. Like, unless they get an extremely lucky Shang, almost nothing matches this in terms of power.
Yeah, this is the deck I was hinting at earlier when I was talking about death stuff. My head goes here. This is like a guilty pleasure of mine, and there's another one. Admittedly, I haven't played too much of myself, but like, every time I lose to something like this, I'm like, why is this so good? It feels so good on paper, and this is kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, is this just a card or two away? Is this just some, like, a certain meta away? This feels close to me, and this is where my head goes with death is Thanos. Or Destroy, I mean.
It's got Wolverine in it. It's clearly an amazing deck. I actually like Destroy quite a bit. I think that you've got a solid Destroy here, and I do enjoy playing it. It's fun. You know, it's anytime you're sort of blowing stuff up, right? It's whether it's your stuff or your opponent's stuff, I think it's fun.
I mean, Wave on 5 is just really strong in this deck in particular, because like, your opponent going off early opens them up for so much crap, right? Like, your opponent has to assume you have Wave and go off early, and then like, they're all sitting there for your Shang. Like, have a great day.
Yeah, I will say, I want to play a version of this deck where we cut the Phoenix Force, we cut Deathlock, and we cut like Yondu maybe, and we're adding Chavez, Spider-Man, and Galactus.
Oh my god, I was screwing around with stats earlier today after I made this. There's a Thanos Galactus list floating around. I don't know whose it is. No one's talking about it. It's only got like 150 games, but its win rate is the highest Galactus win rate, and it's completely through the roof. I've got to figure it out and mess with it. I've got it saved in one of my 18 documents.
Is it close to what I just said? Because that's kind of where I'm at too when I see these Thanos lists. Is I want Galactus in this list, and I want like Spider-Man to go with the wave, and then it's just another one of those lists that can like leverage Galactus as a surprise card, and it's like, what am I doing?
So it's 120 games from 70 to 100 with a 63 win rate and a 0.9 cube rate. It's actually running the Galactus Null Thanos Death package, but with Wave is the only ramp besides Time Stone with Professor X and Spider-Man.
Okay. Probably don't
Daredevil,
need Professor
Professor X,
X.
Spider-Man.
Probably
Yeah,
don't
I
need
don't think you
Daredevil.
need both.
But we can get more Destroy and have that just be an alternate win condition.
Yeah.
And I like that. I want that. And I think that's where this should be. And I think that's a really underrated deck.
So I think we've built like 3 potential meta decks this episode so far.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's fun.
Where do we place this deck on our list?
I'm putting the Galactus version of this deck high, personally.
So let's pretend Galactus is there instead of Phoenix Force, and we'll just go from there, right? We're running Galactus in America. Who cares? Like any version thereof. So I think this is either above or below the Phoenix Nimrod deck.
I'm putting this above, but like I said, this is a guilty pleasure of mine.
I think it's a little bit more reliable, isn't it?
Stone's making that way.
And we're, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Because now
I would
number
agree.
4, we're not putting it above Good Cards Darkhawk though. Right?
Oh,
I'm putting
do
my
that.
foot down. I'm putting my foot down. It's not going above.
If it's down, then yeah, I'm not going to argue for it.
Yeah. All right. So we've
All
got
right.
10. So it's not going to show on everyone's screen, but we will read them. Roy, you want to do that?
Sure. Our number 1 sleeper deck for the month of July 2023 is Comfort's Thanos deck. Then we have Bounce Surfer in number 2. Good Cards Dark Hawk is in our 3rd place spot. So the second set of second tier of our little decks here brings us number 4 with the Thanos Death deck that we just talked about. It's a lot of D's and it bothered my tongue there. Then is the Phoenix Rod deck. And then we've got Shuri Kitty sitting in number 6. And then we have the Nimrod Jikato. Is that how you say that? Deck. And then sort of bringing up the rear are the fun but extremely linear decks of our negative deck, our Hella Tribunal, and last but not least, in this month of July, the most patriotic month of the year, is Patriot Surfer. So I think this is a really cool list of sleeper decks. I hope our loyal listeners and loyal viewers got a lot out of it. Do anyone of you have sort of any final comments? And obviously, if you're listening to this, you can go into the show notes and see the deck lists for all of this. And you can also, of course, go to Marvel Snap Zone and Glazer's account, where you'll see a lot of these as well. So make sure you check that out. But does anybody have any sort of final thoughts about this top 10 list?
Yeah, if Shuri Kitty is 6 and Patriot Surfer's 10, this is a very strong list of card decks, I think. That's a strong list. That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
That's very true. I also, on a side note, want to say that I very much enjoyed just talking and sort of the creative aspects with all you guys. It was very, very cool. So it was the first time I've really gotten a chance to sort of talk with people to do stuff like that. So it was fun.
It's what the cast is for.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you all helping us make that list. And let's move into our final segment that we do every episode, which is our variant of the week. We have 3 awesome, should be 4, but mine did not get put up here due to
never sent. I will show you
communication
my
errors between Glazer and I. But obviously mine, which I'll just leave our loyal listeners and loyal viewers mysteriously, is obviously the correct choice. But I think we have probably the most sort of common, popular one here. This for the first one that he's sort of fighting a bunch of guys with spears, sort of like a classic Shang-Chi look. Who picked this one, and tell us why you...
that is mine, and it's largely because it's Art Adams.
No, that's Art
like
Adams.
this is,
makes sense,
yeah, it's like a classic comic book thing, and I'm like a sucker for that. Also, this was my most wanted variant from like the second I started playing the game, and I got on Second Dinner's list breaking of the rules for the new Spotlight caches. I pulled this variant, and it's already gold with a gold border, and it's so beautiful, and it makes me so happy. It's my single favorite thing in the game.
It's a beautiful variant. All right, the next one is Ryan? Is it Ryan Gonzalez? Is that how
I
you
think
pronounce
so.
her name? Who picked this awesome one? I really like this one myself. So this is probably my second favorite of the Shang-Chi's. So
That was me. Yeah,
good taste of you.
yeah, thank you. I've wanted this a long time. I remember seeing this pretty early on when it was first leaked. I've been waiting for it for a long time. For reference, I checked earlier too because I knew we were doing this, and I love that y'all picked Shang. That Shang is the most boosters I have of any card in the game, and it is 3,628. I've played that card more than any other card, and I've been waiting for this variant for so long. It's coming, and I am excited.
Oh, all right.
That is
Last
impressive.
but not least is one of the new Phoenix Force variants. I think this is from the AVX era. WolverThor, why did you pick this?
So mainly because I like the animations of the Phoenix Force cards. They are, I mean, even the Namor one, I got it from the bundle. I don't even play the card, but I like to upgrade them to at least animated so I can kind of see it. And I was just looking at it going, holy cow. So I didn't actually get this card, but I just knew how pretty those animations were for the Phoenix Force. So I was like, I'm picking this one knowing how good those animations look. Because I just think they're fire.
Awesome. All right, that brings us to the end of the episode where Glazer's going to take us home on these podcasting roads by selling this, each of you out there. But first, before we do that, W, why don't you tell us what people would find if they went and followed you on Twitch at W Streaming or on Twitter or YouTube?
Twitter, you're going to find my decks. You're going to find my thoughts. I'll post everything I think is good and relevant to the game. Streaming, the schedule tentatively right now is Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Times will be tweeted, or at least when I go live, I will tweet it. You'll just find my play. You'll find my analysis and my thought processes in the game if you are so inclined to find those things. So I'll be around, and I appreciate y'all today having me.
So my turn. So there are two people in the game who, the instant they publish a deck, I immediately drop what I'm doing and go make a video. One is Labby, the other is W. Every deck is phenomenal. We had this long conversation earlier where a lot of his friends are playing this kitty deck, this kitty Shuri deck, and during that conversation in my head, I'm like, well, thank God they're not playing things you made because they'd never lose. I think that there are like maybe 3 to 5 people that are in the conversation for best deck builder in the game. W is absolutely one. Safety, Revis, Shayad back when she made stuff. And W is right there with as good a claim to number 1 as any. You should follow him. You get better at the games and you get the best of the best decks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was cool.
Awesome. All right, WolverThor. What would our loyal listeners and loyal viewers find if they went and followed you on Twitter at WolverThor or went and watched your YouTube videos at WolverSnap?
So generally on Twitter, I'm talking anything generally Marvel Snap. Recently, it's been a whole bunch of spotlight discussion, trying to either help explain the system, some of the math I saw, trying not to appear a shill about what I think the system is, but just helping people understand it. But generally speaking, if you go over to my YouTube where most of my content is, I try to cover basically everything that I can Snap. A lot of it's economy, offer reviews. I try to dab into tier lists and things that I think of. As somebody who started the game later, I tried to lean into some newer player type stuff because my experience was different than a lot of people who had been playing for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months or whatever it was. So I tried to lean into that a little bit. And now, I actually really sort of try to learn and test decks from, honestly, like Glazer said, people like W and people like Lambie, who are these really good high level card players that I will never claim to be. I will, I like to play poker. I like to think strategy. I like to think steps ahead, stuff like that. But I love hearing people like that talk about the way they play the game. And so I try to sometimes take a great pro deck, I call it, and can a noob like me come and play it? So I don't know. I just like to have fun and spread positive energy as much as I can. So I don't know. It's sort of as much as I can get into that realm. I touch a little bit of everything, I think, or at least attempt to.
So if you're following Cozy and Dexter and enjoy their enjoy their content, you need to be following WolverThor. The production values are through the roof. The thought process is phenomenal. And what I really appreciate is because a lot of that content can skew toward fun, not analytical. And that's not meant as an insult. It's a conscious choice a lot of creators make. WolverThor has some of the highest level analysis. All of that production is backed up by a deeply analytical mind, by mathematical analysis, by careful consideration. It's so genuinely, when I started getting involved in Marvel Snaps, and one of the first things I told everyone involved is we need to do more things with WolverThor. He's unbelievable. He's a diamond in the rough, and everyone needs to be following him.
You are too kind. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, that does bring us
It still says Den here. Oops. I just make a copy of last week's and change.
All right. Well, while Glazer's going in there to fix that, so when folks actually see it, when I share it with the world, let me remind you all where you can find us. We are on Twitter at SnapJudgeCast. We are on the Marvel Snap Zone Discord, which you can find a link to join either in the show notes, the description of the episode, on YouTube, or on your friendly neighborhood podcatcher. Excuse me. We are on email at snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com. We're on Mastodon at snapjudgments@tabletop.vip. And most importantly, we are on our own personal YouTube at SnapJudgePod. All right. That brings us to the end of this episode. W, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
WolverThor, thank you so much for joining us.
Also, thanks for having me. I enjoyed our conversations very much. Look forward to chatting with you folks in the future.
And Glazer, as always, thank you so much for joining me for yet another episode of Snap Judgments.
Always a pleasure. Peace, everybody.
All right, loyal listeners, loyal viewers, we are out of here. Stay safe, make good choices, and keep on Snap.